Welcome in to another solo edition of Building the Pride. I'm your host, Drew, abandoned by his co host, Mike. Mike, how are you? Oh, right, you're not here. You had to go to Florida to buy your new house with your family. I don't know why anybody would want to live in Florida. It's hot there. The only reasons I can think of are beaches, women, Disney World, Walt Disney World. That's the same thing twice. Universal theaters, many sports teams, destination and tourist locations. Let's see. Oh, it's shaped like a penis, which has got to be a real selling point for a lot of people that live down there. The cons. What are some of the cons of living in Florida? It's hot. They have hurricanes on the reg. Alligators will walk up to your house and eat your trash and your dogs. They have huge snakes and lots of other people, which might be the worst thing of them all. So, who knows? Apologies. People are requiring my attention. No, they don't. It's just a note from a notification from the Athletic. So, good news. Things are going well for me personally. I know that's why everyone tunes in. Job is the best job I've had. New job is the best job I've had in my working life. We'll say that's happened when I turned 22. I've been working since I was 16. I got to build stuff today. I didn't think I'd be any good at it. In fact, I thought I would be bad at it. Actively bad. Like, hey, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. I thought that I would be bad at building stuff, and it is the first day, and they're not exactly giving me the plug the computer chip into the processor. I don't know. But the stuff that they asked me to do, I did correctly. So I just hope that I can just put that on repeat for about the next 25 years. Retire. So that's going well. I got to see my mom today, which is always nice. And my sister told me that of the three things my nephew keeps on his bed, one of them is a gift I got him for Christmas. So a little like dumpster truck. It's a stuffed animal because he loves monster trucks and Paw Patrol and that kind of things because he's 5. So that's awesome. By now, Detroit Fan Man has noticed that I'm by myself. And that's because Mike is not here. I've been betrayed and abandoned by my co-host, as he is wont to do. So we'll talk a little bit about the Lions tonight. We have some news. We'll get to that. Let's just kind of. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let's catch up on some of that news. Some transactions that have happened. So today, the Lions have signed linebacker Zach Cunningham to a contract. They waived Abraham Beauplan. I don't know how to say his name. But he's been on the practice squad and elevated to the active roster a couple of times. He's primarily a special teamer. Let's see. They signed a UDFA, Caden Priestcorn, to a rookie contract on May 9th and cut him 3 days later. Not a great look. Tyleek Williams has signed his rookie deal. Isaac Tesla has signed his rookie deal. So I guess that leaves Ratledge as the big quote-unquote, he's not a holdout. He just hasn't signed yet, I don't believe. So that's going on. The earth is still round. It's always been round. So if you encounter someone who claims that it is not, you're duty bound to inform them that it is. And there's a myriad of experiments that you can do in order to prove that it's flat. Like, so for example, the one that I've shown people that have told me this in all earnesty, that the earth is flat, is that if you take something maybe 2 feet high that looks, I don't know, what could you use? You could do anything that's like a firework that maybe if you guys are the kind of people that shoot off fireworks, which lots of people love to do, if you have a firework and you put it in your driveway around noon and you just come back at 1, come back at 2, come back at 3, you can see how the curvature of the earth makes the shadow change and lengthen. And that's all you need to prove it. Like, there's this really great YouTube clip of these guys who believe the earth is flat. So they try and replicate an experiment where they set up a series of screens, opaque screens, with like a keyhole that they look through. And so if they're right, if the earth is flat, they should be able to extend this series of opaque screens with keyholes that you can look through indefinitely because there's no curve. And they get like a couple 100 feet away, and they can no longer see like one of the keyholes through the other one. And it's like, well, why not? Well, it's because the earth is a curve, you dumbass. And like you know, if you start going down a curve and you put a keyhole here, it doesn't line up anymore, you know, like, oh, come on, dude. Well, if I know you're joking, but if you were serious, I appreciate that you trust me enough to change the fundamental belief. So no one's been to the ice wall, as they believe. So, okay. So if you guys have anything you want me to talk about, or questions or discussion topics, this is your opportunity to get them in. I'm willing to talk about just about anything. Hopefully it's about the Lions. Not much is going on. We've got OTAs, or rookie OTAs. Aiden Hutchinson, this is the big one, has been cleared to resume all on-field football activities. So that's huge. What else? What is the name of our offensive coordinator? Morton? I keep wanting, I think it's John Morton, and I keep wanting to say that he was a wide receiver. What of Anzalone? In what context? Is he Alex Anzalone? Fansided says Lions turn up the heat on Alex Anzalone with the latest signing. Linebacker signed former $58 million linebacker with Anzalone uncertainty. Okay, so this is much ado about nothing. So here's what I think. If you take a look at the roster, and it's 87, 90 people, something like that right now. Let me go to over the cap. The depth at linebacker with Rodrigo being injured is very, very limited. You have starters, obviously, in Campbell, Derek Barnes, and Alex Anzalone. It's at 91 guys right now. So, like, the reason it's at 91 is that we get a one slot exception for Hassanein, because he's a foreign-born player. And he's from that. He might be from that program, the IPP, International Player Program. But this is nothing. There's no threat to Alex. This is depth. So Zach Cunningham has not been a starter level player for several years, 2-3 years. And what he's good at, the NFL is doing less of. And Alex Anzalone does it better than he does. And the reason the Lions want redundancy with these kinds of players is simply that. Like, if for some reason Alex Anzalone gets the flu or is kidnapped or something like that, then you have someone who can come in and kind of replicate what he does, right? That's what this is. This is the depth signing. Anzalone is in the last year of his contract. He'll be an unrestricted free agent this upcoming offseason. I am betting the Lions will re-sign him to like a 1 or 2 year deal for a little bit more than he's making right now, and which isn't much. Let's see what he's making. 7.2 is his cap hit this year. So he has a void number. So he's 31 this year. He'll be 32 next year. He has a void year on his deal. He'll be an unrestricted free agent. We owe him $1.2 million, at least as a cap number, in 2026. My guess is the Lions will sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal, tack on more void years to that deal, and then at least his $1.2 million will come off the books and be rolled into whatever his cap number is in 2026. And the reason I think that is there's no definitive backup plan at weak side linebacker for the Detroit Lions. 3-year, $9.8 million a year, and the third year an option. It's an interesting contract idea. So 9.8 would put him. He made 7.4 in 2024, and he made 7.2. He'll make 7.2 this year. So it's somewhere between 2.5% and 3% of the total cap, right? So if the cap bumps up like it did last year, 9.8 could easily be right around that same cap percentage. So that's entirely possible. And the 9.8 is kind of throwing me. Where did you get 0.8 on a 3-year deal? Is that like from Spot Track? Yeah, he's a captain. I mean, so like these are another great reasons to keep him on the squad. So it's not like his play has declined. You know, I mean, he's 31, but like it's not like his play's dropped off a cliff or anything. Like he's playing as well as I think he's ever played. No, that's just what I'm saying, because you can't pay him $10 million a year, so it'll be just under that. Why can't you pay him 10? I'm just curious why you. Does something kick in if you pay him 10? But like, I do agree that he will probably get a contract that pays him more. It'll be right in line with what his cap percentage has been. Yeah, but if Dr. Detroit, if they re-sign, okay, so what you're saying basically is if they extend Hutch and JMO, let's say this coming March, right? 10 months from now or so, Anzalone would be going into year 1 of your proposed extension, so 9.8 a year, right? So where you would save the money is likely year 2 of the Hutch and JMO extensions, so 2027. So the way that the Lions seem to be formatting their contracts, if you look at the batch of guys they've extended to like top of their position group contract extensions, is that their pay obviously will go up in the first year of their extension, but it's years 2 and 3 where their spike really happens. So I would guess that Hutch certainly, and I don't know about JMO, but like I would resign JMO, but like their first big, hang on, that's going to hurt the cap number, should be in 2027 unless they play on their 5th year options, which I think would be impossible for the Lions to pay those 2 guys first round, 5th year, fully guaranteed contracts. So if they are both going to be extension, and we know Hutch is going to get one, then I'm thinking, yeah, so we're on the same page. Then 2027 will be the big spike for those 2 guys, is my guess. Now, they might, I could see JMO getting a Kirby Joseph formatted contract where he basically has no cap hit whatsoever. Like, Kirby Joseph is going to be this, if he plays anything close to what he's playing this last year for the next 4 years, he's the best steal. He's one of the best steals at free safety under this current CBA. Goff could be some of the answer for that, though, too. Am I correct? Well, so let's take a look at Goff. Let's take a look at Jared Goff. What are we going to do about Goff? Goff. Sorry. Let me present my screen. So, Jared Goff, right? Make it bigger. All right. Nope, wrong way. Okay. So this way it pushes out all the ads. So Jared Goff is right now 31 years old. Okay. So he's going to make $32.6 million this year, 10.7% of the cap. You take $131 million cap hit if you cut him, which they won't, and you would owe almost $100 million on your cap. So that's impossible. So in 2026, he is going to count for almost $70 million against the cap, more than twice the cap percentage. Same deal. Like, the cap savings comes down to here. That's your dead money hit. You don't get any cap savings whatsoever. If you cut him, they're not going to cut him. Here's the saving grace of Jared Goff's contract in 2026 is that he can be restructured for up to $40 million. So your cap savings and what's going to get them under the cap is going to be restructuring Jared Goff for the 2026 season. So then it's debate time, right? So then 2027, he's 33. He'll count for $54 million against the cap. If you cut him, you save a little bit less than you cap it. And a cap hit of $29 million 2 years from this upcoming season is nothing. It's nothing. Like, we've seen massive cap hits for like Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson just be absorbed by their teams and really not slow them down, you know? And so then in 2028, he would count 61.6 against the cap. There's no guaranteed money. You'd have a massive, this is 3 times what the dead hit would be. So like, it just depends on I think it depends on how he's playing in his age, after his age 32 season, because in 2027, that's when you can get out of it. So the problem then, and anytime you have a quarterback on the roster making that kind of money, the problem becomes, how do you replace them? So, I'm not a huge Jared Goff fan. I don't think the Lions can win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. He just doesn't do any. He does nothing with his legs. And I think that compared to players like Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, like, his arm talent is not special compared to those players. So he is very good at timing and precision routes over the middle of the field. St. Brown and Laporta love that stuff. The Lions offense is built around Jared Goff. So like that's the other problem is that if you move away from Jared Goff, you cannot just have anybody step in and run the offense. Like the offense is designed for what he is good at. So I would think that if you let's say that after the 2026 season, they want to move on, right? They cut him, they get a little cap saving, they get a little cap savings. If they haven't addressed the edge opposite Aiden Hutchinson by then, it's a travesty. So then you have a running game, but like at that point, Derek Montgomery. Sorry. Mike, help. I can't make the picture go back to the way that it was. There it is. I'm a genius. All right. Sorry about that. I hit the back button when I was in studio, not when I was on the page that I was looking at. That's your point. And then we can fit what we need to into 27 signing JMO, Hutch, Joseph, TTC. Who's TTC? What's TTC? It's nothing for Jared Goff who's playing like he has strength. But what if Jared Goff isn't the same Jared Goff? That's a lot. Yeah, that's just it, right? Like the one thing that I've really enjoyed about watching the way that the Lions have rebuilt their roster is how Brad Holmes is building in redundancy and like backup plans on like a position group by position group basis. So like, look what we've done at cornerback recently, like interior defensive linemen, like guard, like there are lots of position groups on the roster that have this built-in backups, built-in redundancy. Players can grow while they're playing special teams, that type of thing, and then, but it's not a complete roster. It's one of the more complete rosters in the NFL, but like, it's not perfect. Probably never will be, So, when the bill is starting to come due, we've got, as Dr. Detroit's pointed out, like they've extended Sewell and St. Brown, McNeil, Goff, Derek Barnes was an extension. Kirby Joseph got extended. And then what happens with, we still don't know about Hutch and JMO. Pascal, I think, gets like a Derek Barnes style contract extension. Like, I don't know that there's going to be a big market for a player like Josh Pascal on the free agent market. I bet they let him explore it. And then if he finds a suitor, fine. It's not a huge loss. And then if he doesn't, you get him cheaper, and he knows your system and he's depth and like a good, he's not a bad player. Josh Pascal's not bad. He's just not elite, but you can't have it's not Madden. You can't have a roster stock full of, 5-star recruits and number 1 overall picks and that kind of stuff, So they're starting to have to pay the bill. Sewell, St. Brown, McNeil, those are all massive extensions. And then Joseph signed a pretty sweetheart deal, as far as I'm concerned. Like, he basically did what Shohei Ohtani did, which was to defer most of his money, half of his money, to the first year of his void year. So the first year that Kirby Joseph plays out his extension, the first year he's off the team, They owe him almost $40 million. It's crazy. So it's an interesting way to format it. He's cheap as shit while he's on the roster, but the minute he's not on the roster, he's the most expensive player on the team because he's not helping you at all. So Hutch is probably going to get something like Myles Garrett got. I wouldn't be surprised. And then outside of that, like you're talking about your 2023 class, so you're talking about re-signing guys like Gibbs, Campbell, Branch, and Laporta. And so if you don't re-sign JMO, you might be able to re-sign all of those guys. I mean, if you restructure if you format those contracts in a way that spreads out their spikes, you could probably get away with it, And Tesla is not slow, and it looks like he's going to play on the outside, and he's got sure hands and that kind of thing. So there's I don't know that I would call it a good chance, but there's a chance that Tesla is the JMO replacement for a part of the short term if they don't resign him. Obviously, Brad does the contracts like that to use the CBA, etc. Is there a chance that a change in the rules in the future could make this a bad deal, or would it be grandfathered? So that's a great question, Brian. Tip of the cap. I believe that the way that it works is that when the current CBA in 2011 was ratified by the league and the players union, the major impetus for that change was that rookies were basically destroying bad teams, and you didn't have to look any further than the Detroit Lions to understand why. They had Matthew Stafford, Calvin Johnson, Matthew Stafford, Sue, 2-1-2. Was that the order of them, or was it Stafford, Johnson, Sue? But having a number 1 overall pick and then 2 number 2s as the foundation for your roster also meant that those guys were effectively not rookies because Stafford was not drafted after Ndamukong Suh. All right, Google history of Detroit Lions first round picks. Of course, Wikipedia starts off with 1936, the most relevant year. Matt Stafford, Brandon Pettigrew. So it goes, Calvin Johnson was number 2 overall in 2007. Then they picked Gosder Cherilus at 17 in 2008. Matt Stafford at number 1 in 2009. Pettigrew was in there at number 20. Then they took Ndamukong Suh. So I am now, and I was sure when I said it. So I didn't know that Calvin was 2 years before Stafford. That was a little strange. I didn't know that Cherilus jumped in between the two of them, but also Gosder Cherilus was a terrible pick. But to answer your question, Brian, I am not sure how it works. I would hope that in order to solve a particular financial issue, that let's use someone like Matt Stafford's contract, right? Like Matt Stafford signs his rookie deal. He's automatically one of the highest paid players in his position. He hasn't stepped on the field yet, right? There would be some way that the new CBA would take what he's owed and convert that into the new format. Otherwise, you're not saving anything, right? The cap doesn't go up $100 million to give, teams in that situation a break. The only way to alleviate the cap problem would be to redo the math that the cap, how it's calculated. And so you either take the player salary and reformat it, or you have to change how the salary cap per team is calculated. And I would think that the better way to do it, and the way that they did do it, was to change the structure of the NFL draft so that, number one, you didn't have people holding out, and number two, that incoming rookies weren't destroying the teams that drafted them, especially bad teams, by making them pay for a player as if they had signed them on the open market, right? Like when Sam Bradford was drafted by the Vikings, Rams? I can't remember which team actually drafted him, but like he was the highest, like I think he was like the second or third highest paid quarterback in the NFL the minute that he got drafted. Like that's terrible. So like he was drafted by the Rams. Gotcha. I'm sure he played for the Vikings at some point in his career, but he bounced around a lot at the end. So that's just no good. Like you can't have, like, the whole point of a rookie is that you're getting some kind of like short-term benefit. Hey, Beady Buster. It's good to see you again, man. It's been a minute. If you've got anything you want to talk about today, Buster, just throw it into the chat, okay? Like the whole point of a draft pick is completely defeated if you're already paying them as if they're not a draft pick. Like the team is not garnering any savings. So this new CBA is, I don't know where the union would go if they want to renegotiate it. They've already extended the CBA twice. I know they've amended it once for something minor, but like this financial system works. Like the only leverage that the NFL Players Union has is if the league wants something, and the only thing the league wants is more regular season games. And if the league wants more regular season games, then like for every $10 the NFL makes, I think something like 60% of it goes to the owners and 40% go to the players. Like that's going to be like 58-42 or 55-45, at something. And like the players are going to get a bigger share of the profits. I mean, their bodies on the line, their careers. I mean, 18 games is a lot, So like, if I was the players union, I would be like, you're going to give us more money and you're giving us, I know that the players union has talked about getting an additional bye week. They've talked about reformatting the off season so that players can have time away to be with their families, because the NFL is essentially so much everything that goes on over the course of, like, the schedule release and the draft, the combine, like OTAs, mini camp, training camp, media sessions, all this kind of stuff. Like it just never stops. Like there's really no off season in the NFL. It's just a machine. And like no other sports league comes close to competing with any. I mean, the only thing that, like, if you put the NBA finals up against the NFL draft, who's winning that? I mean, I'm betting it's the draft, but like, I mean, so like the best other, like if you're going to put the World Series up against the schedule release, like baseball probably wins, but maybe not, like this thing is, I mean, like I've been to Fort Knox in Kentucky, and like the NFL's got more money, than Fort Knox. I mean, what if you took the NFL and compared it to like what they make, like what would their GDP be if they were their own country? I bet we'd be shocked where they rank in the like nation, ranking all nations by how much money they make. Arizona iced tea, fantastic, absolutely refreshing, and it's enormous. So I love your question, Brian. I've been thinking about it. for like the last 10 minutes. But I guess my only real response is I don't think there's a reason to change the rules unless the NFL puts an 18th game on the schedule and there's a reason to force everybody back to the negotiating table. Otherwise, there's just no reason to fix what's not broken. This is about the most perfect agreement we have in professional sports in this country. In the most prominent league that makes the most money, when these owners and players figure out ways to share it. So it's like there's a lot of really smart people, way smarter than me when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I would bet that a lot of stuff would be grandfathered in, but like I think that it would be grandfathered in a way that's like you can keep your guaranteed money, but this is how we're spreading it out over the cap now. Like if I was a player and you're like, you owe me $40 million over the next 3 years, and you're like, cool, but this is how it's going to relate for the cap, I'd be like, I don't care. Like as long as you owe me $40 million, I don't give a shit how you accounting that stuff for the salary cap. My concern is that the league will be bothered by the games teams like the Saints play with the salary cap. The Saints, and like by other extension, like the Eagles and the Green Bay Packers, all play the same game, which is to kick the can down the road. Like they treat the salary cap like a credit card, and then when you max out your credit card, you go get another card and you transfer the balance, right? And you reset your. That's where 10 years ago you didn't have void years, on contracts. Like void years are just a method to help teams spread out some of these cap hits. But like even like let's just continue to use the Saints as an example since they're the most egregious team to do this, right? So the Saints had, I don't remember when they won their Super Bowl, 2016, something like that. New Orleans Super Bowl win, 2010. So they won a Super Bowl 15 years ago, right? Then they had one of the better drafts in recent NFL history under the CBA in 2017, where, let's just see, New Orleans 2017 draft. Their draft consisted of Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Trey Hendrickson, and Alvin Kamara, I believe. Yeah, so that's... Oh, Al-Qadim Muhammad was also in that class. Look at that. Fun. Oh, hang on. This is way better than I thought. This is their class. Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, who now plays for the Ravens, Alvin Kamara, Alex Anzalone, Trey Hendrickson, Al-Qadim Muhammad. That is an absolute murderer's row, right? And they lived off that draft for years, right? They let Trey Hendrickson walk. They just traded Marshawn Lattimore. Alvin Kamara, they've re-signed to a hideous contract. Obviously, Anzalone walked, and now he's found a home in Detroit. Al-Qadim Muhammad has found a home in Detroit. Ramczyk just had to retire for medical reasons, so not really their fault. But that's an excellent draft. So, like, that draft kept them in NFL mediocrity for 8 years, almost a decade. The problem that New Orleans has had is that to support that one class, they have had to extend players, restructure contracts, and all that antics to keep either really good talent or mediocre talent on their roster. And every time that they restructured a big deal or cut a guy or Drew Brees retired, which allowed them to spread his cap hit out over 2 years or something like that, like they got a little relief and another draft class, but they have also been horrendous drafters since then. They've drafted poorly, they've traded up multiple times, and they missed, right? So, like, you can do all that shit. You can do all the stuff that Brad Holmes does, but you have to hit. Like, if you make there should be no debate that, like, if you trade down in the draft, right, and you pick up additional picks, you pay those guys less money than where you would draft, and you get more chances to find a good player. There can be no doubt that in a vacuum, that is a superior method in the long term to building a qualified roster, right? Brad Holmes is an outlier. Brad Holmes just is not wrong when he selects NFL talent. So he has been able to circumvent all the negative consequences from that methodology because he's been right about who he's drafting, like, to a percentage that is, I don't think, really appreciated in the NFL or by people who are not Detroit Lions fans. So Detroit is starting to have, in my opinion, a problem like the Saints have had for the last 9 or 10 years, in the sense that their roster is now becoming filled up with extension quality players. This is not a bad problem. If you look at teams like New England had $120 or $140 million in cap space this offseason, and they went and they spent a ton of money, right? But they spent that money on players already in the NFL to convince them to come and play in New England. That's, on the face of it, not bad, but they had all that money, which was not dedicated to players who are currently on their roster. Detroit does not have that problem. Detroit is paying its own players who they have already probably gotten, quote unquote, the best, most productive years out of when they were 23, 24, 25 years old, and cost next to nothing compared to where their peak level of play could be before they hit 30, 35 years old. Who knows? So, I mean, what does Penny Sewell look like at 35? He might be Trent Williams. He might be, who knows what he looks like, but, like, he's probably closer to Trent Williams right now than he is anybody else. And, you're paying him on a first-year rookie deal for all of that production immediately for a third of what he's worth or a fifth of what he's worth if he were to hit the open market. So, like, Caleb Williams' father wanted to circumvent the NFL's draft rules and get his kid to play in the UFL for a year so that he could then go to the NFL and enter into the free agent market right away. So he wouldn't have to play on a rookie contract, right? Caleb Williams, if he had simply left college and gone, or the number one pick in any year, if they had just gone to the open market, it would look like it would be worse than what the previous CBA looked like, where you were guaranteeing Sam Bradford $50 million, which was like, I don't know, 26% of the cap or higher. Back then, probably a lot higher. That kind of thing. So in order to, you only have to be underneath the cap one day in the entire year, and that's the first day of the new league year. So you can do whatever jumping through hula hoops or lying, or not lying, but, like, you can, all the antics and tricks that teams have figured out how to do, you can do all of them so long as you are $1 under on the first day of the new league year. So that's what New Orleans has done. Like, if you don't do that, you get docked draft picks. So New Orleans has, for as bad as New Orleans has been, and they have been like $55-60 million over during the season, and none of that matters, right? None of it matters so long as they're $1 under on the first day of the new league year. And the way that has hurt them in the past is that they lose players off the back third of their roster. So, like, you couldn't keep Janoris Jenkins, who's not a world beater, but like was a quality contributing starter who knew your system, right? Like, you lost the guy behind your starters. Now you're losing depth. You weren't able to extend Trey Hendrickson. You weren't able, that type of thing. Like, that's where it shows up. Like, their poor decision making and kicking the can down the road and like maxing out their credit card shows up with they lost players to the open market because it's not that they didn't want to retain them. They had to find ways to get under the cap, right? And so what we have learned in the CBA is that if you abuse the cap as badly as you possibly can, like New Orleans has done, you can do that for basically 10 years, almost 10 years. And what it will probably get you is like the 16th pick in the draft and missing out on the playoffs on a tiebreaker. So New Orleans has never been paid off for this methodology, but the team that has been paid off for it is the Philadelphia Eagles, who just do it better and more smartly and hit on draft picks and that type of thing, and where New Orleans has not done that. So to alleviate your concerns, Brian, Brad Holmes does the single most important thing that he can possibly do to alleviate any potential cap concern that might be building on this roster in the next 3 years, which is that when he goes and drafts players, he's not missing, right? And like, even if he were, like, let's say he drafted Jameson Williams, who when he drafted him, he had torn ligament in his knee, right? If Jameson Williams had come back and immediately retorn his ligament and can't play and just like is consistently hurt, never realizes his potential, never has a 1,000-yard season or is able to stretch the defense, that kind of stuff, like, that is the kind of thing that needs to happen to Brad Holmes to have his strategy not pay off, right? And that's just bad luck, right? And I'm not gonna bet on bad luck to the point where the Lions cap becomes a real concern. Now, having said all of that, let's take a look at the Lions cap. Okay, so I'm going to try this again, and I'm going to try. You still need to be under the cap at all times during the active season. No, you don't. So how is New Orleans $55 million over the cap, like, midway through the season then? I don't think that's true. Unless I'm not understanding what you're saying. Future years can be over the cap as much as they want. Well, how is New Orleans over the cap and have to get under it every single year for the last decade? Riddle me this. They're not over in future years. They have to get under the cap, and then they can balloon right back up. So when the Super Bowl gets played, right? Which is the first day of the new league year, right? So they do their cap tricks to get under for the new league year, and then they balloon back up. Go catch your flight. Okay, so add this to the stage. Make this bigger. Wrong way again. Always do it wrong. So the Lions currently have the second most cap space heading into 2025. That's the league year that we're in, right? So this upcoming March 12th is the first year of the 2026 league year. Is that what you're saying? Or was it this past March 12th for the 2025 league year? Because what is going to happen? What is going to happen is the Bills right down here cannot operate their team for the whole season on $1.6 million. Right. So this past March, the 12th of this March 12th, 2025, is the first day of the fiscal year of the 2025 NFL season. I'm with you so far. And what I am telling you is that the Bills in this $1.6 million will be a negative at some point when we start playing games. This is not a static number. And the reason that you can do this is because, let's say the Bills have a bunch of injuries like the Lions had, and they have to elevate people from their practice squad. It will eat into this $1.6 million, and they will exceed their cap. Remember, I'm not talking about money or checks that are going out the door. I'm talking about the way that they calculate their cap space. And there will be teams, I think this last year was like the bottom quarter of the league, exceeded the salary cap because of in-season roster moves that they had to do. The Lions spent like $10 million this last season signing players to the roster, making roster elevations from the practice squad, and that type of thing, because those game day checks become guaranteed if they're on the roster a certain amount of time before game day, or once game day happens and they're on the roster, those checks become finalized. So there are teams, probably the Texans, Giants, Falcons, and Bills. This number right here in the left-hand column next to their names will be red during the season. If that was true, if they had to stay under all season, then this number could not reflect an overage during the season, and it has for years for like the New Orleans Saints. Now I know that like here, the over the cap has kicks forward at some point to reflect the fact that it's the 25 season being spread right now. So here's 26, right? So the Lions have the worst cap in the NFL right now for the 2026 season, right? So this is what Mike's talking about. Mike is saying that this is a future year and that the Lions need to get under this by whatever day in March the new league year is. I completely agree. Where I disagree with Mike is that in 2025, these teams will exceed the cap because this happens every single year. They will not all stay under the cap because they will have to sign players, elevate players in their practice squad, other shit that I'm unaware of. Right? And so this number is not static, right? Like this number has things built into it like bonuses and incentive-laden deals, that type of thing. They get paid out if players are likely or not likely to achieve them, that type of stuff. What about things like, I don't know, maybe bonuses for like, coaches don't affect the cap, but like if Josh Allen is named NFL MVP, he might get $1 million, right? I don't know if that affects the cap number or not, but like there's a bunch of other stuff at play because at some point this season, there are teams that are going to look like this on this list. Now, over the cap is not the NFL, right? And it's not the league office. But the Bills are not staying $1.6 million under the cap through 17 games. It's just not possible. So, right. And I said that. So I hope that the Bills this year did not put any bonuses into their cap that were likely to be achieved. You know, I can't remember the NFL salary cap affecting whether or not a player could be traded. So like if like Jalen Ramsey is a player that might be traded, right? This year. And so here are the Rams at 19.5. They're right in the middle. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 is what, 19? So they're 19th, 18th, something like that, in cap space in the NFL. So if the Dolphins trade them Jalen Ramsey, he is not going to cost them $19.5 million on this cap. But ads. So 2025 season, if he is traded post June 1st, he will have a 6.7 million dead cap hit and a cap savings for the Dolphins of 9.9. And I believe that's the number that is negotiable between the teams. And let's just say that they took him at this number, which they won't. They have to absorb this onto their current cap. Now, they could then restructure him to gain cap space and that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna say, like, let's see, when do the first buys happen? Week 5 or week 4? If the Bills are still under the cap, now I don't know if when we cut down to 53 players, if every team's gonna get a rush of cap space, right? Because this is factoring in 90-man rosters for all 32 teams. So there's a lot of those that are probably not guaranteed, which will come off the books, which will give everybody a bunch of cap space. So that could happen, that type of thing. But, so if you have to stay under the cap the whole year, then New Orleans can't function the way that they do, because you have to get under, then you'd have to get under enough to sign your draft class. You'd have to be under enough to cover any likely earned incentives that are on all of the contracts that are on your 53-man roster, and then whatever else that I don't know about or am forgetting, to do that. And so, like, if that is the case, then the Bills have $1.6 million to play around with, like, for the whole year. I'm sorry. Like, I didn't see an article that you linked. Probably written by a New Orleans Saints fan. So anyways, that's not why we wanted to do this. This whole tangent was something about Mike waiting for his flight. Here's the reason we're looking at this. 2026, the Lions have the worst cap situation in the NFL. So, like, when we were like, trade for Myles Garrett, this is why you can't do it. Right? Now, I will say I think this number is largely inflated because they have picked up both JMO and Hutch's fifth-year options, which are fully guaranteed, which come right off the top of the cap. So this is 20, 30 million bucks that's going to go away because they're going to extend or cut those guys. So that's going to go down, which is great because they have to be under by someday in March. But 2027, way better, right? Look, $76 million under. But how many people is that counting on the roster? Well, that's 27. 34. So you got to make up 19 players on the roster. I was out riding mini bikes. Seems like a legit thing to do. It's gorgeous outside, at least here. I'm not sure where you are, Joseph, but here it's like 76 and gorgeous. I don't know. Sign me up for this weather all year round. This kind of thing. But like the cap space hurdles are going to need to be pretty well managed, right? So here we are in 2026. This is Goff's big year. Taylor Decker's on the cap for 21 million. Frank, this is last year of Frank's deal. He's on there for 16. Or is this a void year for Frank? Nope, that's the last year of his deal. So, but look, St. Brown's only on for 13. This is wait, is this the last? Go away, ads. My goodness. This is a void. 2026 is the first year of the voids for. Did it kick back over to 25? Come on, man. So, Goff's at almost 70. Decker's at 21. Last year of Ragnow, St. Brown is earning 33. That's his big year. This is the guaranteed year for Aiden Hutchinson. So this is guaranteed salary 19.8, cap hit 19.8. Penny Sewell, $28 million. Ali McNeil, almost $29 million. DJ Reed, this is his big year. Jameson, that's his fifth year option picked up. That's completely guaranteed. So and 2026 has got 49 guys on the roster, So not too bad, but you're starting to have to manage the spikes. Then 2027, Goff is down. Decker his cap number is bigger, but you can save three times what he's worth if you cut him or trade him. St. Brown's coming down. Penny Sewell's the only one that just steps up each year. So this is his big year at 32, I believe. Let's see. Maline's at 27. Hutch and JMO aren't on this roster. And then that's basically it. But ultimately what this comes down to for the Lions. See, Mike, have a good flight, buddy. Ultimately what this comes down to for the Lions is that they have players on the roster who are difference makers, all pros, up and comers, lots of talent to be had. And they're now having to pay them, which means guys like Sewell, St. Brown, McNeil, Joseph, are no longer values because they're no longer on their rookie deals. So you have to continually replace those guys with new good players on rookie deals, and the Lions roster doesn't support those guys making it onto the field because the starters are good and already on the field. So how do you get a benefit? You can get the benefit of the money, but they're not playing for you. That defeats the purpose. So what do you do? And the answer to this question is largely you have to be willing to let guys go into the market, and then in order to free up their spot. So I don't think that we will see Brad Holmes pay more than 3 offensive linemen at the top of their position group. So right now, obviously Penny's getting the most, Ragnow's getting, then Decker's getting the second most. But Ragnow, as far as being paid per his position group, he's the next highest, and then it's Decker. And those are the guys that are going to get the money on the offensive line. So look at what Brad's done. He's got Christian Mahogany, he's got Graham Glasgow, who's making $7-8 million. That's not much. Then he's got Miles Frazier and Tate Ratledge. So he has 3 guards on rookie deals, and they're all getting cross-trained at center to see if any of them can be worthwhile if Frank gets hurt or retires or whatever he does. So I think they'll just have turnover at guard, right? This is also something that Bob Quinn did, for what it's worth. The NFL has largely shown that you can pay one guy at wide receiver, top of the position group, money, and then you have to supplement him with guys who either aren't as good, who make like mid-level free agent deals, or rookie contract guys. So if you think about, it's a good example. So like let's say San Francisco, right? San Francisco has Debo and Brandon Ayuk. They paid them both. Now Debo's in Washington. Ayuk got hurt. That's a bummer, but then they had Juwan Jennings, who they're paying that much. They drafted Ricky Pearsall, right? And then Christian McCaffrey's kind of so you can supplement that with either worse players on decent free agent deals, or rookies on the best deals that you're ever going to get. But then they have to produce. So Brad's really good at picking the guys who produce, right? And so then, because they're rookies, come on along, I'll take your horrendous deal. I mean, they're really, like, if you're not picked in the top 15 picks of the draft, like, you're getting a horrendous deal as a rookie, So more money than you've ever seen in your life, but still, for what you're worth, it's horrendous. So, I have heard that the NFL teams plan their caps 3 years in advance. So it's entirely possible that Brad's got this all under control and we'll just never know it. They don't stick to one type of contract format. Like the Penei Sewell is different than many of the other contracts they've signed. The Kirby Joseph deal is unique to many of the contracts that they've signed. Most of the contracts that they've signed go something like this. First year of extension, increase from what you made last year, about half what you're going to make in the next year. Second year of the deal, boom, you're going to make twice what you made in the first year of the deal, and then your numbers are going to start to come down. So you can look at it like they're either giving them a bunch of money up front, or these aren't 4-year deals. Like they're not like Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't sign a 4-year deal. Like he signed like a 2 or 3-year deal. And like the team then built in the ability to get out of his contract for something reasonable if the worst should happen. Right? Not saying you'd want to get out of Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract extension. There's nothing that indicates he's anything but going to be as good as he is, if not better, that type of thing. But the other thing for all of this that I think is going to loom over the organization in the next 3 years is, what do you do about Goff? So it's not that he's a bad player, but he's going to cost you he's 36 and something this year, almost 70 the next year, down to 54. So he comes down $15 million, in 2028. But you're in your early 30s. He's not athletic. If he can continue to do what he's doing now for the next 3 or 4 years, he'll probably be on the roster. But if you need to we need to free up cap space because we continue to hit on draft picks, we have to sign them. We want to re-sign all of our 22 class. I don't want Sam Laporta to just walk into free agency at 26, or whatever. You're going to have to figure that out. So is this something I wouldn't be surprised if, because running backs and linebackers are paid so little in the free agent market compared to the rest of the position groups, the Lions probably picking up a 5th year on Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell makes a lot of sense, and then extends Branch and Laporta in, heading into year 4 of their deals, would then allow them to break that class up and continue to extend them over a longer period of time. It would be better to go 2 and 2 this year on 5th years, 2 next year on, or 2 this year on contract extensions next, and then 2 guys playing on 5th-year deals, 5th-year options, and then those option guys then get extended in the next year, and now we can spread out the spikes just a little bit better. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Of course, the Lions signed almost nobody in free agent. They got DJ Reed this year. That was a surprise. But I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I don't expect them to do a day one signing again for a while. Could be wrong, but like if their cap is going to tell us anything, like they're going to have to start doing some of these tricks that like the Eagles and the Packers and the Saints use in order to manage their cap, because so far this team has wanted something like $20 to $30 million in the season just to manage their roster, practice squad elevations, signing players for depth, that type of thing. Like where would we be last year if we signed none of those guys, right? It would be even worse. Maybe you don't even make the play. I mean, you don't get the bye, who knows? But they brought in lots of guys, paid them, that type of thing. So Mike might be right. I don't know. I would be surprised though, because week 3, I'll be looking at cap space situations, and I see teams that are over the cap. Like there's a website and the name is overthecap.com. It's not everyone stays under the cap. Like teams like New Orleans don't get famous because they're always under the cap during the season, and then they always have huge bills coming due the next year. It's because your roster gets out of control, and you have, they would just always be under then. So it doesn't matter. He's probably more right than I give him credit for, but he is basically a Rams fan. So, what do you do? Anything else you guys want to talk about? Throw it into the chat here in the next minute or two. Otherwise, I'm going to call this one for the week. I was thinking about doing a 2026 mock draft, just start learning the names and kind of becoming familiar with the names of players, but people might not want to do that. If Hatters was in chat, he'd probably want to do it, that type of thing. But it looks like, the problem with mock drafts during the season, I heard Goodell might change the cap. Any merit to it? Well, he can't change it. He's not allowed to just change it. Change how it works. Expansion of the roster is coming down the line. That's why the cap reflects this. So the cap reflects right now what the Lions roster looks like with 90 players on it. And you got to remember, players 54 through 90 make at least the minimum. So $840,000, something like that. So that's 35 guys, that eat up almost $1 million. So if you want to call it $21 million that comes back, okay, if Goodell wants to change Danny, if Goodell might want to change the way the cap works, he's going to have to sit down with the Players Association, and that has to be negotiated. So which means that the NFL Players Association is willing to sit down, or the contract that the two sign runs out, and that they're forced to come back to the negotiating table so that there is a collective bargaining agreement. Otherwise, there will be a player strike, which is not unheard of in professional sports. But typically, it's the players that strike want to get a cap that more favors them. And this one really favors the players. It's always going to favor the owners, but this one really favors the players too. So I think the thing that gets both of these sides back to the negotiating table for the cap is, will the league move to an 18th game? I know Goodell wants that, if they're gonna get an 18th game, if I was the Players Association, I would say we'll give you an 18th game, but you get one fewer preseason game. You add a week, a second bye for all teams. We redo the off-season schedule, and we get more money, somewhere between like 2 and 5% of the total amount of revenue that the NFL makes in a fiscal year. And I wouldn't come off those. And so if an 18th game means the NFL makes, it would be billions of dollars, because that's another week or 2 weeks, to be honest, that they can put NFL TV on Prime, Peacock, ESPN, ABC, CBS, and wherever it's shown, Netflix probably at some point. Then it's probably worth it for Goodell to give back most of this other stuff. But he can't just be like, this is how the cap works now. He has to, they are locked in. There are some things I think that like a committee can meet on, or I know that they have made amendments to this current CBA. And I know that they have extended this current CBA. So I don't think either side's all that anxious to get back to it, unless something's changed, where the 18th game is about the only thing that I think that could be put on the docket. Like, you could always say player safety, but then I would usually kick those concerns to like the rules committee, so that you can change the rules in order to increase player safety, and not the way that the cap works. The cap is about money. So at what point do the players union and the league say we need to refigure out how the money works? And the way that this cap is set up is it's set up to escalate by proportionately year to year. So like, we have to figure out how much the cap goes up. How much money did the league make? That's X. So then the cap goes up by Y as a percentage of the increase. So then the way that the rookie pool works is the rookie pool increases proportionately to the increase in the cap. So like, that's always going to be set. So you never have to worry about it. So like, it's an interesting thought, as to what would bring these two sides back to the negotiating table. I just don't know what that is. So with an 18th game, you got to think that the roster will be expanded. So that's another thing, right? So let's think about that for a second. So if you think about adding 7 players to all NFL rosters, because you still have a practice squad, right? So 7 multiplied by 32 means you're adding 224 players to game day rosters. Okay. So like, if you take, let's say that the lowest salary that a player can make back into the roster is $840,000 a year. Okay. So your long snapper, your special teams only guys. If you add 7 guys at that number, it's almost $6 million. It's $5.88 million. So that's $5.88 million per team that the NFL needs, the NFL Players Association pays out. So if you times that by 32, that's $188 million a year. So, and that's if they never get a raise, right? So if the NFL league minimum never increases, then you're paying out 120. So if you go, let's say it's 960, like you get $120,000 a year raise. So you multiply that by 7. That's $6.7 million per team. Multiplied by 32 teams is $215 million. So that's all completely doable, right? Like, these television contracts pay out in the billions. So like, that's nothing crazy. But then the league, the players union has to feel that money is being handed out equitably, and that's where the difference of opinion comes in. So also, I think the question is, you can put another 224 bodies into the NFL. That's not a problem. There's plenty of those guys. There's enough beating hearts out there that play professional football where you can put them on a roster. But I think that, and basketball is really having a problem with this. I think right now when there talks about expansion, is that there are not enough quality NFL players on rosters right now. And the league is facing epidemics when it comes to things like offensive line play, overall quarterback play. So I don't if you're just talking about backup linebackers, safeties, running backs, that kind of thing, wide receivers, like cornerbacks, there's enough people who play those positions that you might see those positions improve because the overall depth that you're adding to the roster can help improve teams who have shown that they're going to have 5 or 6 wide receivers. They're going to carry 8 to 10 offensive linemen. They're going to have an equitable number of corners and defensive backs per what they're carrying for their skill position groups. That kind of stuff. I think the depth would improve at those positions, but it's just depth. And it doesn't mean that those teams wouldn't put guys on there well, what if we added a second kicker? Or what if we wanted I think you could do a lot with another 7 players. You could basically say we're going to have a package of players that these are our trick play guys, or we have a lineup in there for very certain things. Now we have the roster space and the ability to practice with these additional guys for these particular things. I think it can be very interesting. My first impression is that it dilutes the talent pool in the NFL, and the NFL doesn't want that. Now, if it doesn't affect the on-field product, that's a different thing. So, but it's one of those things, I don't think you know it until you try it. So I would expect that they would try and get somebody like the UFL to try and expand their rosters, but those rosters are already so talent depleted anyways, they don't even be able to tell the difference. So it leaves you back to college football, and that doesn't help you because college football's rosters are already 3 times the size of NFL rosters, so it doesn't matter. So I mean, it's an interesting question. I would love to see somebody figure out the ramifications of expanding the roster, however many players. The league needs to go to an 18-game season with a league-wide week off after 9 games and a bye. 2 would be better. Tied to games overseas or weird days of the week. 2 preseason games, of course. Yeah, I think that in some format, you've hit on all the high points here. Is that preseason games mean nothing revenue-wise to the NFL. They don't want them to have it. Teams want preseason games because it helps you evaluate your roster in game situations, which is invaluable to them. So, my concern with getting rid of preseason games is that you're eliminating talent evaluators' ability to evaluate their rosters. And I think 3 is probably the right number, but the players union is not going to give the NFL an 18th regular season game without a reduction somewhere. So one of the things I think that is not talked about enough in the NFL is that the way that the offseason works for veterans and other players, the on-field product already suffers for TV and gambling interest. They will mangle it until the revenue is impacted. I don't know that. So I would be interested to see what you mean, how gambling and TV interests affect the on-field product. I would like more specific examples of how you think those things impact the NFL. But the NFL is always going to do things they're going to get it. If sports betting is legal, they're going to get in bed with it. If streaming platforms become the way that people consume content, they're going to get in bed with it. And so whatever's next, they're going to get in bed with it because the NFL create something that is more valuable in this country than almost anything else, and that is ad space, because everyone wants to watch football. And and if fashion shows were the thing that most people in this country wanted to watch, they would have the same ability as the NFL to create ad space, and you would see 3 or 4 hour long fashion shows. So the problem is that the thing in this country is that that's football. Football is the thing that the majority of people have agreed upon by their actions, that tells people, like, what is it, Reuters, or who does the little boxes? I can't remember. The people who track what people watch, those people know that the thing that most people will tune in for the longest amount of time on a frequently consistent basis is American football. So in this country, so that's where the ad space is. So that's where people who have advertising dollars are going to put their money. So as long as the NFL maintains that ability, they will continue to get in bed with whomever they want to get in bed with in order to maintain that revenue stream. So if you ever ask yourself the question, why does the NFL suspend Calvin Ridley for a year for a first offense gambling problem where he bet on NFL games, or he bet on whatever he bet on, and Ray Rice or someone punches their pregnant girlfriend in the face and he gets a 2-game suspension? What is the difference in those things? It is because the American viewership has proven that we don't give a shit about someone punching their girlfriend in the face, or having a gun in their car, or doing drugs, or taking steroids, or whatever. That doesn't affect the overall integrity of the sport. It doesn't shake the faith of the people who watch enough to get them to stop watching. What has in the past in other sports, basketball, baseball, affected the overall populace's faith in the sport is when they think that the sport that they're watching has gone down in legitimacy. And the thing that people consistently show up to that hurts that legitimacy is if athletes bet on sports, because they have direct control over the sports. So the NFL does not view sports betting as the same thing as domestic violence, because sports betting affects the overall faith that the American public has in watching football in a different way than hitting your girlfriend does. That's sad. I don't agree with it morally. That's the reality, as that we as viewers have indicated through our watching habits. We don't care if someone hits his girlfriend, or has a gun in their car, or spanks their kids, or whatever. Like, we care that Calvin Ridley might be running the wrong route, which leads to an interception, so he can win a bet, or that Shoeless Joe Jackson throws the World Series, right? So that's the reason. So but there can be no doubt that the NFL getting in bed with sports betting has earned them shitloads of money. Now I bet on football games. Now that I make more money, I can bet on them again. But also, I have no impact on, what the Lions do on the field, or any team does on the field. So me betting on sports doesn't matter. Football on Thursday or Christmas Day is hard on the players, so it impacts the product. The game stops and starts for television, which affects game flow. My comment is about their hierarchy of interest. Oh, okay, I see. So let me address some of these just right off the top of my head. The game stops for TV timeouts and that kind of stuff. So when I used to go to Michigan games with my dad when I was a kid, there was a special referee who would step onto the field, and the game couldn't start until he stepped off the field, and he was on there for the TV timeout, right? But the NFL has that flow down to such a science that they know what commercials are airing after an extra point, in between, whatever, all that stuff. So they time that shit down to the second, to the point where and people, the players in the league have been doing it for so long now that I think that like at some point it probably affected like the flow of the game, but now that just is the flow of the game. Like, and everyone is adjusted to it. So here's the thing that I agree with you the most about. If you're playing on a holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, if you are playing on a Thursday and then playing on a Monday night and you have 4 days in between or whatever it is, like that is ridiculous, especially if you have to travel. I would argue that when they set the schedules up, some of that is unavoidable. Some of that is certainly based upon the matchups that they expect to be good, right? Do you remember how all those prime games in year one were so bad? And I think it's because they were just like, Prime's the new kid on the block. They're going to take, Commanders Bears, 2 years ago and just watch it be like a 9-6 game that was just awful product, right? But like now, a couple years into Prime being hosting NFL games, like you can work them into the schedule and put decent product and figure out how one more person at the table, Prime, affects how everybody gets what they need to eat. And so I'm just glad they didn't have like 8 streaming services come on board at the same time. So long as you can space that out and like figure out how it, how everybody gets fed, you should be okay. So here's about their hierarchy of interests. Their number one interest is money. So I used to watch Pardon the Interruption all the time, and Tony Kornheiser said once, and this just rang true with me, that when he was a young journalist coming up, there was an old timer in his office, and Tony Kornheiser would ask this guy, like, why is this person doing this? Why is this person doing that? And the guy would always say, the answer to all your questions is money. So that rings true with me. And so like when I don't understand the motivations behind anybody anymore, my first thought is I'm going to go to money and I'm going to do everything I can to eliminate that as a reason as to why they did this. But overall, most of the time, anybody who does anything is affected by doing it for money first, and then it's something else. And so like with an entity like the NFL, it's always money. It's never anything else. Yes, an NFL football game is a choreographed production. It's true. Yeah. So that's, I think that they do that better than any other sports league, and it's because they have a quarter of the games, a fifth of the games. Like hockey and basketball have 82 games. That's 5 times the number as NFL teams. And then baseball is just ridiculous. 160 games. It's 40 times the number of games. So it baffles the mind. But I'm sure that we'll have an 18th game before too long. And as long as they don't take the Lions off Thanksgiving, I don't particularly care. But like most of the things that you guys have said, I really agree with. Okay, I got time for one more question. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to throw it in the chat. I know that I'm not getting your responses, the second that you type them. And I don't know why that is. But we can hang out here for another couple minutes. I don't know if any of you guys are watching Andor. It's amazing. You guys should watch it. Some of the best Star Wars IP that I've ever seen. Myles Garrett didn't hold out for money. That was just the inevitable outcome, but it is also the exception that proves. Dun dun dun. Cliffhanger. I think it's. You don't think Myles Garrett held out for money? You think the Cleveland Browns went to him and was like, "Hey, we got Kenny Pickett and 2 rookies. That's our plan to address the quarterback position. Oh, by the way, we're going to give you, what was it, 41 a year?" I think they just paid him enough to make him happy. It's like, yeah, I'll play on bad teams for $41 million a year or whatever it is. Because nothing else has happened on their team that I think would make Myles Garrett happy. Mike is texting me things from the plane. I think he wanted to leave until they were like, here's $40 million. You know, like, how could he not? How could anyone want to play? First of all, it's Cleveland, Ohio. Gross. The team's nickname is the Factory of Sadness. They can't even get the name of the team right with the uniforms. Like, the team's name is the Browns. Their uniforms are orange. No one seems to be able to point that out to them. Did I mention the team's nickname is the Factory of Sadness? I mean, it's just sad. You know, like, this is a team that, like, 20 years ago picks up and goes to become the Baltimore Ravens, you know, who have had, I don't know, way more success than the Browns. But, like, then they give the franchise back to Cleveland. Vomit. You know, I don't know why anybody would want to stay there. I mean, it's just one of the most poorly owned and managed teams in the NFL. But there's a number that people will put up with to do things they hate, you know. And I just think they found his number. I mean, you can't afford to. Now, I am of the opinion, I think that NFL teams hold on to talent and they don't view the shedding of talent as a potential positive. Like, if you're a GM and you trade Myles Garrett, you're probably getting fired. That's probably a reason that lots of teams make the decisions that they do. It's not that, like, trading Myles Garrett for 2 first-round picks and a bunch of cap relief in a year where we're probably overall gunning for the number 1 overall pick anyways could really help us, A, achieve that end, save a bunch of money that we could then reinvest in, like, younger players to help retool, and the additional draft picks, which are probably not going to bring back a player of the quality of Myles Garrett. But that's the problem anytime you trade a good player, is that you're probably not going to get back what that individual player is worth. Right. And, like, the Browns had all the leverage and control. They could control who he talked to, whether or not he was allowed to, hey, Alan, what's up, man? Whether or not he was allowed to, like, enter into negotiations or even hold meetings with people. Like, it was just, they had all the power. And so, like, it's fun for pundits and people like me and, like, you to think about. But, I mean, I think they were never going to let him go. So if you're not going to let him go, it benefits you to pay him, because then he's quiet at least. So, well, he got the most money a non-quarterback's ever been given in the NFL. So, that much, you know. And, like, the nature of the NFL is that as soon as he gets it, like, 2 weeks later, somebody else gets it. So it's just, you know, you're in the spotlight. You get your name in the headlines for a week, a couple days, and you just start collecting your game checks. And, like, it's like, oh, this is great. I'm earning, you know, they're giving me $2 for every dollar I used to make. So this is really nice. But the Garrett situation in Cleveland was just like, he had no control. And I think he got out of it the best that he could have hoped for, which was more money than anybody else who wasn't a quarterback has ever gotten. And that was good enough for him. Yeah, okay, I'll continue. But, like, he might be unhappy next year. There's nothing that stops him from coming back in 12 months and having the same complaint. Oh, we're not good. We don't make the right decisions. They're not utilizing me correctly. Like, you know, or whatever. Like, my talent's being wasted. I want to win Super Bowls. Like, yeah, you want to win Super Bowls now that you got paid. You know, and, like, he was criminally underpaid. Like, he was getting $20 million a year for who he was. Like, he you know, if he made the open market, he'd get 3 times that. There's just no one's done it yet, so no one's going there. But you're telling me the New England Patriots wouldn't have paid him $60 million a year when they had $140 million in cap space and a rookie contract quarterback? Come on. So for him to get double was excellent for him. But, we could be back here real quick. Is Ian Kelly going to make this football team? No. Who's Ian Kelly? Sorry. So I was listening to Pride of Detroit, which is a wonderful, wonderful group of people who are really tuned into the Detroit Lions. I'm going to their roster right now to see who Ian Kelly is. Kennelly. He is a safety. 24, 6'2", 205, went to Grand Valley State. He is a rookie. So, I'm half wondering if this is kind of a joke that you're pulling on me in order to extend the amount of time around the show. So here's how I see this part of the roster shaping up. So the Detroit Lions safeties are the playmakers in the defensive backfield. They play their corners in a way that pushes wide receivers towards the middle of the field. Why? Because that's where more defenders are. That's where their safeties are. Branch and Joseph are both incredibly instinctual, smart, rangy playmakers. And they want to force. That's why Kirby's got 9 picks last year. Branch has got 4, and our corners never get them because they funnel the action to the safeties. Okay, so your entrenched starters are Joseph, Branch. That's for sure. Now, if you want to call the nickel position another safety position, we can talk about that. I view it as a cornerback and not a safety, but a lot of safeties end up playing nickel, so I can understand the argument. I see the overall depth at that position being something like Branch, Joseph, Norris, Hallett, Jackson, the kid they drafted from Georgia. They could carry a 6th safety on this roster, but he has to be a special teamer. So if Ian Kennelly is going to make this football team, it's because he's good on kick and punt coverage. That's it. Or he's a returner. And if he's a returner, he has to beat out an all-pro in Khalif Raymond to do that. So my guess is that's not what he's doing. Dominique Lovett, the corner, the wide receiver that they drafted from Georgia in round 7, it's being speculated basically from Pride of Detroit that the only way that he can make the roster is if he's a gunner on special teams. And the other gunner is Khalil Dorsey, which is primarily the reason that he is on the roster at all, is that they are saving these positions for specialized special teams roles. So, I play Magic the Gathering. So anytime that we're looking at building a deck and you want to put a card in it, the first question is what card comes out. So you have to ask yourself, which is the worst player on the 53-man roster last year that you could see coming off. So if you think about it, they're going to keep 8 to 10 offensive linemen. The quarterbacks are set. The running backs are set. The wide receivers are set. 4 or 5 deep. Tight ends are set. Linebackers have almost no depth, so I don't know that you can effectively not have another cut a linebacker. And then eventually you get to the point where it's like, well, are you cutting Corby Sorstel? Are you cutting Coyote Iwashika? Are you cutting Rock Sin, who you signed in the offseason, who's hurt? Probably. Are you who are you cutting? So like we did see that little UDFA wide receiver from Illinois make the roster last year on special teams, but then they had to cut him because they needed help on defense, and he got snapped up by the Colts, I believe, or the Jets, somebody. And then he was on their practice squad or their 53-man roster. So, like, my guess is that there's like 2 or 3 differences in the 53-man roster this upcoming year compared to what they were last year. And like some of them are obvious, like Tate Ratledge is going to play right guard. The rookies are going to make so I think the rookies are Tesla safe, Frazier safe. I think Dan Jackson's probably not a shoe-in for the roster, but like the lack of depth at safety means that he's ahead of somebody like Kennelly. So then Kennelly has to fight with the other special teamers and basically has to say, I'm so good at special teams that you can't afford to keep me off the roster. My guess is he's probably a practice squad guy. Who would see something like 3 game day elevations based on the matchup a season. So, because if I'm like, or 3 or 4, because after the 4th, you have to put him on the roster. You can't lift him from the practice squad anymore. That's why they had Allen Robinson come up as many times as they did last season. Was because they had to add Patrick to the game day roster. So, okay, so that's the last question. An hour and 45 minutes. No mock draft. Boo. I hear it, guys. Everyone loves the mock draft. But yeah, we will start learning those new player names in due time. And there are still spots on this roster that they can add talent, but they're starting to become harder and harder to find, which is great. It's a good first world problem to have. So Mike will be back next week. I will be back next week with more great news about the Detroit Lions. Until then, hope everything goes well for you guys. Enjoy the weather. Be happy. See you soon. Bye.